All right, so Chris couldn't make it tonight, so I brought with me my absolute favorite person to have on the side, Mr. Joe of Guy at the Movies. Joe, happy to have you here, man. We're here to talk about Loki episode 3 and also to preview some of the movies that this guy has been watching at the Tribeca Film Festival. All of that and more on tonight's episode of the Talkin TV Variety Stream. Stay tuned. Hey, man.
Like WWE entrance.
I wonder if that's what Chris was thinking when he made it. Originally, we've been using that for so long, and I've never watched wrestling, but I love that you're the first guy that actually brought that up. That's actually hilarious. But how you been, dude? It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has been a minute. I've been good. I've been, hanging out, working, reviewing movies. I watched, with Tribeca, we'll get into it, but I watched over 30 movies last week. So,
damn, that's a lot.
Week and a half. So It's been fun, I haven't really slept much. I don't know where I am, but hey, here we are. I
feel like that's the case for all of us, really. Obviously, as we're kind of like winding down, things are getting back to normal, obviously, after the pandemic. And, so obviously, I take it you've been watching Loki. It's kind of the subject of tonight's episode. We would watch that, everything else. But anything else you've been watching in your spare time that's like not Tribeca related?
What have I been watching? So Loki definitely, and then of course diving into all the different theories and stuff that pop up with that, because that of course is like the show within the show.
It kind of goes along with like the whatever is the current big Disney thing of the moment. So
it's so true. I've been watching Love, Victor a lot, catching up on that show on Netflix or Hulu. I'm sorry, which is kind of it's a spinoff of the Love, Simon show. So got
it.
Yeah, been watching that. And then I'm watching so when I get so busy at night when I lay down in bed, I'm like, I need to put something stupid on. And 90% of the time it's going to be The Office. 90% of the time.
Of course.
Right. But I've actually been doing recently Parks and Recreation, and then I've been doing old Will and Grace episodes because they're just absolutely ridiculous.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's just fun. Mindless entertainment. So needed.
There's a reason why those sitcoms are so popular still to this day. Did you watch the Friends reunion when that came out?
I did watch that. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think? I didn't watch it because I've never been really that big of a Friends fan. So you got to let me know. Obviously, as someone who I'm sure actually watched it while it was coming out. So not to age you up or anything, but
it was fine. It was actually better than I expected. I know people had their issues with it and whatever, but because James Corden was hosting but he's fine for that stuff. And the only thing was Matthew Perry looks like he's hanging on by a string.
Yeah, but that's been Matthew Perry the last couple of years. That's the only thing.
It's so true.
I mean, we shouldn't.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, we shouldn't make light of the man. He's obviously had a lot of personal issues as far as that goes. Right. But it happened. I think I made a joke about him and David Schwimmer. They both look like somebody ate part of their chins as far as that goes, just because of how the look of it. And I'm I'm sorry, but I gotta comment on it. Is what I see.
It's so true, and they all look really good except for Matthew Perry. And David Schwimmer looks a little odd. But
surprised by how well they ate. It's funny because I was talking to my mom. I remember because. I remember I was talking to my mom. I took her out for Mother's Day, and also kind of like a goodbye to me, kind of a weird combo thing because it was the last time that we really got to hang out one-on-one before I left, and we were talking about it, and she was talking about she had been commenting basically that the only Friends star that really still looked good was Jennifer Aniston. But I was telling her, Mom, you might want to take another look at that. I'm because those stars have aged, with the exception of Matthew Perry. I'm those stars have aged pretty damn well. As far as that goes, Matt LeBlanc with his kind of silver hair, and Lisa Kudrow, and career-wise too. It's so funny because the long-running joke I feel about that show is that with the exception of Jennifer Aniston, none of them really went on to anything. David Schwimmer's most acclaimed role outside of that show is as Melman the giraffe in the Madagascar movies, which I love because I grew up with those movies. But they're all starting to make comebacks. Matt LeBlanc had episodes, which from what I heard was really good, and Lisa Kudrow is making all these guest spots, and even I think Courtney Cox has something in the works right now that I'm not sure of, and
it's funny because David Schwimmer I think has actually done better for himself in recent years. He, of course, had Madagascar, like you said, but then even with like the OJ show, I think it was American Crime Story.
Yeah, that's right.
He's really good in that.
Yes.
And he's in something. He was in something else, and I can't remember what it is. But Courtney Cox looks like she had some work done. And
it is. She is hers is the most apparent. I don't think it affects her looks, but hers is definitely the most apparent as far as the work that she's had done.
Not at all. I love Courtney Cox. She's never been the best actress, but I do enjoy
but she's
her. I love
reliable.
Her in movies. Yeah, you know what you're getting. But what's her name? Lisa Kudrow looks exactly like Lisa Kudrow did back in the day, just a little bit older.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Show. Yeah, she has this show. Oh my God, what was it called on HBO? Oh my God, that's gonna kill me.
Oh, The Comeback.
Comeback. That show is absolutely hilarious, and it's you got to watch it close because some of the jokes are so subtle. But my God, that show is so good. She was so good in it.
If memory serves, I'm pretty sure it only did 2 seasons. And it was one of those weird, HBO loves to do this where they'll have a show and they'll just like not give it another season for like years on end. I know because they had like that 5-6 year gap between Curb's 8th and 9th seasons, and now Curb Your Enthusiasm is back. And I'm pretty sure she got an Emmy nomination for both seasons of that show. I think that's the only reason why I know even what that show is. But for me, like, the biggest thing for me, obviously, is her cameo in, I think it was season 3 of BoJack Horseman, Space Force, when she's in jail for just no reason, and they never explain why. What a many, dude! Oh, I remember we had you on. That was that's still one of the most entertaining podcasts I think we've ever done. Like, I love going back and listening to that episode. And what was the other thing that she was in recently? Oh, she's in this show that Chris really likes on Netflix. It's about this comedian named Mae Martin called Feel Good. She plays her mom on the show, and I heard that she's really good on that too. Yeah, Chris, that's one of those shows that Chris has been telling me, like one of those like more cultish shows. But that one's really good. Yeah, he really. It's funny because I thought I was good with cult shows, and then he starts throwing them my way, and I'm like, shit, where do you find these? And he just does. Like, I swear to God, dude, like, you thought I was bad with Community? You should have heard him talk about Kim's Convenience, like from when I got out of school up until the podcast. So I'm like, dude, he would not stop talking about it, and he finally got me to watch it. I'm like, this is good. All right, this is kitschy. This is enjoyable. As far as what
Lisa Kudrow, she's in another show or something coming up, and I'm trying to check what it is real quick. She's going to be in that Better Nate Than Ever, which is based on a book or something, and I feel like this is a Netflix show or something. That's
probably
not what I thought it was originally.
Okay.
But yeah, she's still doing well for herself. You froze. Frozen. Anyway, I don't know if that's on your end or my end, so I'm going to keep talking and make sure that we are still giving some content here. But once we get that figured out, I'm sure we'll dive into some deep conversations about what you've been watching. I still have a list of stuff I have to catch up on. But yeah, so his Wi-Fi's down, so we'll talk a little bit. We'll have a nice little chat as I'm over here in this box and that box. But yeah, you know what? It's been kind of interesting going through a lot of the Tribeca stuff, and we'll dive into that and some of those films. But there's stuff that I've been really wanting to get into when we're talking about like Luca and all the other stuff that came out recently. Luca is one that I've been really pumped about, and I haven't been able to watch it yet. So I am going to be watching it. Hopefully, I'm going away next week, so I'm planning on watching it on the plane. But there are just a number of interesting things coming out that I really want to tackle and want to check out. So it's going to be a little while before I probably catch up on everything and need to take a little bit of a break. But yeah, man, Loki is definitely delivering how I wanted it to. And really, I'm hoping that we get into this tonight when Chris gets back. But outside of Loki and Marvel World, looking at that Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings trailer today was just, loved it. Much better than the first trailer. I don't know what they were going for, if they were trying to, differentiate it from other projects. But man, they really, really did well with that trailer today. And of course, there's kind of a cool reveal in it of an old character coming back that was very surprising to me. Did not expect that at all. So I don't know. That movie just looks fun. I'm excited to see what they do with it. And of course, we're getting into, Marvel movie season, right? With Black Widow popping up soon, and off to the races we go. Some of the reviews that I've seen about Black Widow have actually been pretty positive, actually overwhelmingly positive. So that's really great to see. I'm excited for them to deliver a movie like that. It's been a long time coming for Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow. And of course, one of the OG, female-fronted characters that hasn't been given her due totally. So I'm excited to see what they do with her in this movie. But yeah, Marvel is kicking up. What else do we have going on? Man, I feel like there's so much happening in the movie sphere, if you will. I'll talk about it now, but the Transformers movie that we found out about yesterday, which we knew Transformers 7 was happening, but now it's going to be called Transformers Rise of the Beast. So they're totally going the Beast Wars direction, which is just phenomenal. So excited for them to be doing that, and so excited to actually see those characters or those incarnations of the characters brought to life, because Beast Wars was my show growing up. I remember watching it in the morning before I went to school, and it had such a cool story. I think it's only 2 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. But man, that's so much fun with, the Predacons and the Maximals and the Terracons, Optimus Primal. There's just so much that I think is going to translate well to the screen, and it's a great way for them to reinvigorate what I think was kind of a tired franchise, Bumblebee aside. But it really looks like it's going to be something solid. So I'm pumped for that. First time I've been pumped about a Transformers movie in quite a while, probably since the original. And especially with Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback in there, I think that's going to be a real nice pairing. And both of them are on the upswing in terms of their careers, so it's going to be really cool to see. Of course, Anthony Ramos recently in The Heights, which didn't do that well, surprisingly. And it's such a good movie. So I highly recommend that if you haven't watched it yet. Dominique Fishback from Judas and the Black Messiah, one of the best movies of last year. Definitely recommend that as well. She's really good in it. So it's nice to see that they're getting their due. And this is a big franchise to come in and to front. It's had some big names go through it. So I'm excited about that.
And I'm back.
There he is.
Yeah, sorry about that. Gotta love having Spectrum internet. It just sometimes randomly shuts down. I've had to deal with this a couple different times on the podcast now. But so after that, unfortunate long delay. Thank you, Joe, for holding it down. That just shows the trooper that you are. Want to get into Loki?
Let's get into Loki.
Yeah, let's get into Loki. So, interesting scenario, right? So, again, this is another 6 episode of a series, similar to Falcon and Winter Soldier was previously, right? So, this is another situation where they kind of don't have a lot of time to tell their story as far as whatever it is that they're trying to tell, right? We obviously know kind of with Loki now being the third of these shows that we've had on Disney Plus, right? They're definitely using the Disney Plus shows as a means of kind of like furthering the narrative while at the same time... Damn it, my chair malfunctions, wrong lever. Yeah. Oh man, I'm just all sorts of on top of it tonight. So, oh man. So the point being is that this past episode that we watched was the halfway point of kind of the overall show. So we're getting to kind of the crux and interest area, right? But since we're still kind of in what I've started to notice kind of with these initial 3 shows that we've gotten from the MCU, right, with Disney Plus right now, is that I can definitely tell that, like, we're very much in kind of, like, not reset, but in, like, kind of, we're back in the phase 1 of it, where we're just in the initial stages of setting up whatever is the initial big bad that is to come, right? And the one thing that I'll say is that even though I don't think the individual properties have been crafted to the best of their ability, I think that WandaVision has issues. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier have issues. And even though we're halfway through Loki now, so we're still not enough of the way in order for me to really pass judgment on it, but we're still at a point now where I can see the issues with it as far as that goes. The one thing I will say is I definitely so far am enjoying Loki the most out of these 3 shows. But what I will say is that what all 3 shows had going for them is that they did, I think, very, very good jobs with their focus characters as far as breaking down their initial struggles and allowing us to get to know them in ways that we really didn't in the previous movies because they were the sidekick characters, right? WandaVision were always the sidekick characters in the bigger team-up movies. Falcon and Bucky were obviously Cap's sidekicks as far as that goes. And now we're on Loki, right? But if it's not technically like the Loki that we know, it's a time variant of Loki. Loki, right? And which is kind of like basically just their way of, okay, well, we kind of, killed off Loki in the main continuity, and now we got to find a way to keep him around, and this is how they're doing it. And in this week's past episode, right, which sees Loki going after the female variant of him that is the antagonist of the series, who christens herself Sylvie, they end up in a little bit of a hiccup situation with certain of the teleporter things that they use, and end up stranded in this on this random planet that's about to undergo a cataclysmic apocalyptic event and have to escape from it. And if there's one thing that's becoming apparent to me, it's that Loki is with not just with Loki, but with all three of these shows that have come out now. All three of these shows have definitely had a lot of influences and thrown out references to kind of previous television shows that have come before, right? Wandavision, obviously, with an ode to the entire history of sitcoms, right? Falcon and Winter Soldier being a more action-based 24-esque show. And Loki is definitely settling into its roots of occupying kind of the sci-fi Doctor Who-esque space, because this entire episode felt like something right out of Doctor Who to me. Like, I don't know, like, I haven't watched that much Doctor Who, but I feel like you have, but like, I don't know, do you agree with me on that?
I do. I haven't watched much Doctor Who, but I can totally get that reference and that connection. I'm really enjoying this. I mean, the one thing that you just said that I totally agree with is that they really are spending a lot of time focusing on the main characters in each of these shows and really dissecting them and showing different sides of them. This episode in particular has been getting a lot of flack because it was just Sylvie and Loki. And that's, I actually really enjoy that, even though it's a 6-episode series. Like, I think that it did a lot in this episode to just show that these two have found middle ground. They are, they're building a relationship that ultimately strengthens them and sets the TVA up as the villain in some way, or whoever is behind the TVA, all that stuff. So I do like that. I think the writing has been incredibly crisp in this show. Even going back to the first episode where we spent like a good deal of time with just Owen Wilson's character and Loki just sitting there, shooting the shit, talking back and forth. Like, recapping the entirety of what he's done in the MCU. Yep. Yeah, it was great. So I'm actually really enjoying it. Loki came out this week, so happy Pride Month. He did. Caught that, but he's
right. Trust me. I caught it the minute that I heard it, and I'm like, Reddit, Twitter, Tumblr are gonna have a field day with this. They are gonna lose their shit when that happens.
It's comic accurate. So
yes, it is.
So that was really spot on. I was like, yeah, good, happy Pride, Loki.
I'm like, good for them.
Yeah, good for them for doing that. But no, I mean, it's like every other show. We've done this with WandaVision. We've done this with Falcon and Winter Soldier, where we have good episodes that are action-packed. Then we have other episodes that advance the narrative in smaller ways and not these major jumps or whatever. But it leaves you wanting more to see, like, okay, well, they got that out of the way. So what's the next big thing going to be that they're going to show us? The big thing this week is that we got confirmation that like the variants or that the TVA workers are variants. So what's going on with that? And the preview for next week, if you've seen any of the clips that have released, where it looks like we're seeing a young Sylvie. So there's going to be some talk about her. There's also, of course, the question about who she actually is, if she's comic accurate to Lady Loki or Enchantress. I kind of think she's a mix of both.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I really think that the MCU is just like, you know what? We're not going to play with both of them at different times. Let's just put them forward, which I'm fine with. I mean, I love when the MCU does stuff like that. They kind of reinvent their characters.
Right. It's kind of if you think about it, it's kind of what they've been doing since the beginning, right? Since Phase 1, they've been doing that, kind of taking these really tried and true age-old storylines and kind of putting a little bit of a modern-day spin on them, right? Iron Man's origin in that first Iron Man movie is almost beat for beat comics accurate, with the exception of just the location and time period. Instead of it being in the 60s in Vietnam, it's in the more modern day in Iraq. So Marvel's had a long history of doing that, and then for the most part, it's worked. I think, right, so you're 100% dead on, right, with it. We can't really grade these shows specifically on an episode-by-episode basis. I know we've said that before with other shows, but in this case, it really rings true, because in this one, it really is that each episode is just a piece of the greater whole. Now, whether that greater whole measures up, that's a different story, but each episode truly is a piece of the individual whole. And what I'll say is that while we're still in kind of like this weird setup phase where we're not quite sure where any of this is going or how this is going to factor in, right? We know, like, certain individual threads, right? We know Wanda's going to factor into Doctor Strange, and that we know that elements that in this show are also going to factor into that with the multiverse, and that we know that Falcon and Winter Soldier is setting up the Thunderbolts, and that's also going to tie into Black Widow, which is going to tie into Hawkeye, and all this other cosmic stuff, and we know Kang the Conqueror is coming in. We know all that stuff. We know like the loose threads, right? It's again part of just the Marvel strategy of just having us all in the palm of their hand as far as just that kind of reach and realm of control. They can literally do whatever they want as far as that goes. And
absolutely.
Certainly, we've criticized them in the past as far as kind of what it is that we like and don't like about them, but we can't say that what it is that they're doing is not working, because there's a reason why they're still, like, number one in the entertainment industry. But my whole thing with this show in particular, and I think the reason why I'm gravitating a little bit more so towards this show than I did the first two shows, it's weird, right? Because WandaVision... That was the first Marvel. WandaVision is kind of weird, right? We kind of have to grade that one on a curve, because forget that being like the introduction and the first installment of Marvel Phase 4. That's the first Marvel thing that we'd gotten in a year and a half. So, like, talk about grading it on a curve as far as that goes. And, like, everyone's expectation. I know we had Far From Home after Endgame, but, like, it was real. It's like, okay, how are they going to follow up Endgame? So, of course, they're going to grade WandaVision on a curve, and as far as that goes. Right. And even though I think there are certain elements of the finale specifically that didn't work, I still really, really liked WandaVision. I thought it was really cool what it was going for. I thought it had a really interesting and new edge that really hadn't been done before, right? I definitely know that the whole... it embodying different elements of different sitcoms over the years, that was going to be hit or miss for people. I knew that, but I thought kind of structure-wise and kind of character-wise, how they were just using that to kind of categorize her emotional state, I thought was done really well. I thought they kind of faltered with Falcon and Winter Soldier, because even though I think that the messaging of that show was really well intended, I thought it came off as a little bit too obnoxious and kind of in your face, and I thought it kind of disrupted a lot of like the really, really good messaging that show was doing. And in addition, it kind of, I think that show also suffered and I gotta point this out because Marvel hasn't suffered from this in a while, but that show had a bad villain problem where it didn't know what to do with its actual good antagonists, and then the actual antagonists were really underwhelming, but I also know there was a ton of behind-the-scenes problems with that show. With this show, though, like, they're definitely having the opportunity to quite literally do whatever they want, right? They're outside time, they're outside space, so they can quite literally do whatever they want as far as that goes. And with the whole stringing us along and kind of not really informing us of what kind of the final conflict is, I think that they're doing that the best here so far. Because with WandaVision, right, they had the bits and the pieces laid, but the difference being is that at the end of the day, we kind of already knew what to expect for the finale. Because I'm like, okay, with a scenario, it's a Sopranos scenario, right? And the whole thing is like why the Sopranos finale was so problematic. I'm like, because ultimately, you only have one of three ways that this could go with WandaVision. It's either Wanda controlling this, it's Agatha Harkness, because we all knew it was going to be Agatha Harkness, right? That would talk about an obvious twist coming, or it's going to be
all along, you could say,
quite literally all along, and or it's going to be Mephisto, and the Mephisto theory went where that went. But so I think that ultimately is the reason why the WandaVision kind of mystery, quote unquote, didn't work, is because in some senses it really wasn't a mystery if you think about it, and that's kind of the big flaw with that show. This show, on the other hand, we don't know what's going to happen. We've only been clued in on bits and pieces, right? And I think this show is done the best with kind of cluing us into our protagonist, right? Resetting us up with that, cluing us into our antagonist as far as that goes, and kind of course, making our understanding of her completely different than what we're told, right? Which we've seen done time and time again. And this episode was kind of, okay, now we're going to set the protagonist and the antagonist directly against each other and just have them kind of go on a wacky, zany adventure, right? But the zany adventure in question actually has real stakes, because they literally have to, find a way to recharge this thing and escape this doomed timeline, or else they're dead, But also, we had a little hint, like you said, drop where it's like, yeah, all the TVA members are variants, which breeds greater questions about, like, oh, is what they've been told about the timekeepers true? Do the timekeepers even exist? Are they just a thing that's been made up as far as that goes? What sort of relevancy does this have towards the quote-unquote sacred timeline? Like, all of this to me seems like it's building towards one direction, but again, I don't know where it's going. And this is the first Marvel Phase 4 thing that I've seen where it's like, oh my god, this is starting to like get, not good, but this is starting to like get into areas that I'm largely unfamiliar with, and I'm down with that. I'm very down with that.
So I do feel like every one of the shows has kind of kept us guessing a little bit. But in terms of they've led us on, right?
Right.
I think all the shows
which
looking
people
back were like,
don't like. And if you look at a lot of the things that a lot of the Marvel properties people haven't liked, it's things that have done that. You know, look at Iron Man 3. That was like the first big one to do that. And people still hate that movie because of that.
Well, and remember too, like this is Marvel experimenting. These TV shows gives them the ability to experiment and break out of the tried and true rhythm that they've had with the movies that they've done. 24 movies at this point?
Something, 23, 23, 24, I think, with Far From Home. Yeah.
So, like, WandaVision, I totally agree. I love WandaVision for a lot of reasons, mainly because I thought the performances were really good. It kept me guessing, kept me really going. When it ended, it kind of like, it ended with not that.
It kind of just ended, and I'm like, wait, what?
I'm excited to see where it goes because we have a pissed off Wanda Maximoff heading into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So that's going to be fun. Falcon and Winter Soldier, I agree with you. I think that the writing was off on that. I like what they did with the characters in particular. I don't like how they did it totally. And I thought that the inclusion of certain aspects of that, I've talked about this before, but like bringing in the Wakandans, I was like, it seems like an afterthought.
It could have worked, but it ultimately was just to use them as a plot device.
Yeah, poorly used plot device.
And big villain problem, that show.
Yeah, huge villain problem. This one, but at the same time, like we would expect that one to be more grounded.
Right.
We'd expect WandaVision to be batshit crazy, and we'd expect this to be like a intergalactic journey through time, which is what we're getting. I love that the writing is so good in this, only because that is what Loki has always been good with. Like Loki can deliver a line, Tom Hiddleston can deliver a line, can be cocky, can be snarky, can quip, and that's what we're getting, and I love that. So I'm interested to see where they go. It's been said that this is the one that's going to break everything wide open. And I think that's true, right? We have Kang the Conqueror is likely going to be showing up by the end of this. Excuse me. I think that's a little bit more, we can be more confident in that than we ever could have been about, say, Mephisto. So, we're also we know that Kang's going to lead into the Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. He's the big bad there. Which leads me to like my whole theory with this. And I saw this online, or a piece of this online, and then I've kind of like done some research on the back end, and I'm actually thinking if this is true. But I do think that part of what's going on here, I think the TVA exists in the quantum realm.
I saw that. I'm like, ooh, that actually sounds like a theory that might have some steam behind it.
Yeah.
It could work though. It could work though. That's the thing.
With anything Marvel, I can't explain like how. But, like they can.
But that's what you leave it to them, right? You leave it to them to explain the how. We're the ones that come up with the theories, and then you tell us whether they work or not. This is how it works. This is kind of what's created for that great fan studio symbiosis that's kind of taken over the entertainment industry. But I did see that. I think I've been paying attention to a couple of the theories, right? And I'm pissed because I just saw on this most recent episode of Bad Batch that a theory that I've been working on may have just been debunked, which kind of pissed me off a little bit because I'm like, it would have been such a good theory too. But I saw that theory and I'm like, that's actually pretty cool. Oh man, the only thing that I could really say to that is, oh man, after that whole spiel that Owen Wilson gave to Loki in that first episode, I can only imagine what's going to happen when he finds out that he's actually a variant of whoever.
I hope he gets his fucking jet ski. But the other thing is, I my other theory, and I can't prove this at all, and I have no evidence to support this, but the girl in the first episode in the church, I think is young Sylvie.
You think so?
Yep, that's my theory.
Oh, and it's funny because you said that they were potentially going to introduce a young Sylvie with the promos for next week's episode. So who knows? Yeah, like I said, it's only 6 episodes. We're already at the halfway point. We got 3 episodes left, but it definitely, I feel like things are ramping up now as far as that goes. We're kind of in like that Iron Man 2 Thor phase that we were in phase 1 of Marvel when because when Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk came out, right? They came out and they were like, okay, this is cool, but like, is this going to really work? And then when Iron Man 2 and Thor, and then that led to the first Captain America, we're like, okay, we're in the swing of things. This is going to happen now, so we're definitely in this. But my whole thing is, I'm like, Jesus, just phase 4 in general is what we all knew was going to be huge, but like, Jesus, like 8 or 9 of these shows and fucking like 12 movies or something like that. Because think about it this way, right? The entire 2021 slate, which is 4 movies, the entire 2022 slate, which is 4 movies, and then at least the first half of the 2023 slate, which as of right now we have recorded, there are going to be 5 I was keeping track. 5 MCU movies in 2023, only 2 of which we know, being Quantumania and Guardians 3. So
and there's also others that have been unlisted. They've been announced but unlisted. So
that's what I'm saying. Those are the other 3 that are coming out in 2023. Yeah.
It's crazy.
And I'm like, is all of this part of Phase 4? Like, I know that Marvel phases have been known to span multiple years, but they've always been like pretty confined. But I'm like, Jesus Christ, if that's gonna be the case, like, it's almost like they have like micro phases 1, 2, and 3 and case all within this Phase 4. Like I was doing, and like the Shang-Chi trailer came out, and they're already bringing back Abomination for that trailer to build up to She-Hulk. Like,
that's the other thing. Like, where like the through line, right? We knew the through line of the original movies ended up being the Infinity Stones.
Right.
I don't think we're done with Infinity Stones totally. I mean, as referenced in the first episode.
In that first episode, which I already had my problems with that one, but
also, I think Loki had an Infinity Stone on him in this last episode when he stopped the building from falling and put it back up. That's not his powers. He doesn't. He doesn't do that. There's something because I think he took one in that first episode, and then it wouldn't work there, but it would work if he was when he's
right. Anyway, yeah. I digress. That definitely seems like a reality stone kind of a thing.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So you have the stones, right? You have that going on. You have Wanda and her, chaos magic and all that stuff. You have the 10 rings, which are coming into play, and like magnificent power.
Right. And we don't really know how Shang-Chi is going to tie into the rest of the MCU.
Right. But if you see that, like, to switch over there a little bit, if you saw the trailer today, yes, we got Abomination, but who was Abomination fighting in that? Wong. So there's a link there to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
True, yeah.
It's so crazy how it's all like...
The threads are still there. Like, and this is what ultimately made them... It gave them... This is what made them have the ability to literally have a factory that prints money, is the fact that even their worst products, which again, are not worse compared to some of the other previous worst. Like, think about it this way, right? Their worst movie is Thor: The Dark World, which is light years better than, like, some of the other terrible properties that, again, I hate to keep throwing them under the bus, but Thor: The Dark World is better than any fucking bad DC movie that's come out in like the last 15 years or so. Like, Thor: The Dark World, I take that shit over Batman vs Superman. I take that over Green Lantern. I take that over any bad movie.
You gotta throw stones. You gotta throw fucking
of course,
stones.
Of course.
We're not getting into a Batman.
Come on, you don't know this by this point? Come on, you've been on the show how many times now? Come on, man. No, but so there's that. Not to mention the fact that even with their worst, there's always those strings there. So it's impossible. It's literally impossible to be into Marvel and only be like, okay, I'm only going to watch the Thor movies. I'm only going to watch the Iron Man movies. I'm only going to watch the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. It's impossible. Like, do you remember that? You remember that back in the day when fans, when there were going to be people like, oh, that's the beauty of Marvel. You could watch it for the individual franchises or you could watch it for the whole thing. It's like, no. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. Like, you watch this thing for the whole thing or bust. Like, because there's always those strings there. And because that's what made comic books so profitable, right? This is kind of what I've been talking about with these last couple months as far as kind of really understanding the comic book medium and like the problems that Hollywood had with translating the comics to film because they only ever had their own dead set ways of telling stories that they didn't know how to translate the comic books into that, right? They'd finally just mastered how to properly adapt books. And then they had such a problem with trying to adapt comics, right? Because they kept trying to squeeze comics into this kind of like traditionalist film format that didn't work for so long. Then Kevin Feige comes along and actually applies, hey, how about we just tell a comic book story like a comic book? We have these sprawling interconnected chains, right? These individualistic chains about these individual characters, but they're all going to tie into this one greater existing story. And for the most part, since they've all been of pretty adequate quality, like, that's how you get them. And then you have something like Infinity War and Endgame being the 2 biggest film events of our lifetime. So,
yeah,
like
and he started arguably with lesser characters, right?
Exactly. So, with B-tier characters. That's the thing. It's funny. I'll pull it out right now. I got this issue of Time, which kind of tells the entire story of Marvel, and it's kind of translation to the big screen. It's very informative as far as that goes. It gets into like kind of the history of Marvel, even Marvel Comics, even before Stan Lee got there with this guy Martin Goodman that he worked for, and it's honestly insane. Kind of like learning kind of the history of comic book storytelling, and I'm like, wow, this is literally all the and Kevin Feige has gone on record to say this, that like everything that he's hoped to accomplish with the MCU has just been to accomplish what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and all those guys did when they were first creating these characters, and essentially they've done that. You know, like that and moreover. And now we're seeing them kind of bring that mentality to TV, which is a format that almost like essentially works better for it because, again, kind of the ways in which they made the Marvel movies work is by essentially utilizing a television format, because comic books and television storytelling kind of follow loosely similar rules, right? You know, television is kind of a mix between the two as far as that goes. And now that they did that so well and so effectively with the movies, now they are essentially doing that with TV, and it's allowing them to experiment with in all sorts of different directions. And Loki right now I'm enjoying, but I'm the most excited for what they're going to do with with Marvel's first animated property, What If, which is their next show that's coming out. So,
you know, it's kind of funny. Like, Eric in the comments is talking about a bunch of different things, and he's just talking about how he likes the other two movies, being Thor 2 and Iron Man 2, better than Captain Marvel. I don't agree with that.
Me neither.
I do agree.
I'm one of the few people that likes Captain Marvel.
Oh, and
I
like Captain Marvel. I just think they botched the introduction of the character, and number one, like waited way too long to do it.
Right.
Number two, gave her way too much, weight, and then
Endgame
for 9
you're
minutes.
right. Yeah, the waiting too long is just because of like that's just typical studio heads doing what they do. But you're right, because they did hype up her importance way too hard, and then she's literally a plot device in Endgame. So that I'm with you on.
But you know what's funny? I'm thinking about like even what that movie did, and it is like we're gonna get the Marvels, and with Monica Rambeau involved, and like that I think is gonna. I think that will elevate the writing and elevate the character of Captain Marvel better. So I'm excited for that. But we also have the Skrulls and all that happening.
Yeah, and the Secret Invasion show, which I'm really hyped for. Yeah,
so
which is going to be dope.
Level of shit that's already happening. Like there is so much happening.
Yeah,
there is so much happening.
Here's the thing, right? So that's just the stuff that we know about, right? We know TV show wise, right? We're getting What If, Miss Marvel, and Hawkeye, and then next year we're getting Secret Invasion, She-Hulk, and Moon Knight, and then we also know that the two Guardians of the Galaxy shows, Ironheart and Armor Wars. We know and we're getting a Wakanda show. And Echo, who's going to be a character introduced in Hawkeye, they're all getting shows, right? We know about all the movies, right? We know for a fact, right, Fantastic Four has been announced. It doesn't have a release date yet, and we know that they're trying to figure out what to do with Blade and Deadpool 3 because they don't know what to do with the R-rated properties yet. But
I think that's already decided. I think they know what they're doing with that. We just haven't heard about it.
Yeah. Then we have the stuff that we haven't heard about, but we kind of know is coming because they've hinted at it far too much. We know Thunderbolts is coming. We know Young Avengers is coming. We know X-Men is coming as far as that goes. And it's funny because all the pieces of those have been set up. Like, we've been introduced to, like, 3 or 4 Thunderbolts already. We've met, off the cuff, like, 5 of the Young Avengers, and we know a 6th one is coming because we met Wandavision's 2 kids, who are 2 of them. We met Scott Lang's daughter, who's one of them. And we know that Kate Bishop is coming in Hawkeye. And I think that they're going to substitute out the fact that the younger Kang, who became a member of the Young Avengers, with the Ironheart character. Oh, and what's his name? The Bradley's grandson from Falcon and Winter Soldier. He's also he also becomes a member of the Young Avengers as well. And now we're just waiting on Hulkling, who is a Skrull, who we know is going to be introduced in Secret Invasion. Yeah, but that's Sony, we don't like to talk about that because Sony is constantly trying to butt in and be a part of Marvel, and Marvel just wants no part of that, and it's really weird. Like I wish they would address that.
So talking about like Fantastic Four and X-Men, that's again 2 very different directions that we've got to go. And even see how they're going to lay the groundwork to introduce them, I think is going to be really interesting because Fantastic Four is literally referred to as the first family of Marvel.
Right.
And then you have X-Men, which is just going to blow up in the complete world.
Right.
Which I also believe, this is my theory, that I think they've already laid the groundwork for it back in in WandaVision, when we find out that, like, what's her name, Monica Rambeau's genes or whatever have been changed a little bit, and so she goes through that force field and gets her powers. I think that's a really brilliant way to introduce X-Men, that they're happening after the snap,
right?
Because otherwise, it's kind of like, I mean, we haven't even talked about
and it still ties that in with House of M as well.
Right, exactly. And we haven't talked about Eternals, but one of the things that people are saying about Eternals, and I'm sure they'll explain this, but like, where the fuck have you been? Like,
right.
You could.
Yeah, they better have a really fucking good explanation as to why they weren't around for the snap, because oh man, that's already a problem that I have, and the movie hasn't even come out yet.
So that's my whole thing is that I think there's going to be a way that they explain X-Men that's a little more organic, and I think that's a great way to do it. That made a lot of sense when they first did that
it did.
So I don't know. I'm excited for it. I want to see where they're going.
It's going to be good. Again,
time.
I've quoted Pacino from Godfather 3 every single time that we talked about this, and I'm going to keep doing it. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me right back in. So with that being said, that's kind of our conversation on Loki, the 3rd episode. We'll be covering obviously in the next couple of weeks then the last 3 episodes. But so Joe, you've had the privilege, let's say, of getting to watch some movies for Tribeca Film Festival. So talk about that. Talk about how you got in on that, and talk about some of your favorite movies.
Yeah, so this has been my first time covering a film festival officially. So it's kind of neat. Applied for press credentials, got them virtually, and had been basically the way that it's worked is when a movie premieres at Tribeca in person, the next day it's put on virtual, their virtual at-home platform, and access is granted. There's also some that just premiered online anyway. So it's been really interesting. The nicest part about a film festival is that you get to see filmmakers kind of at their rawest, right? They're not big studio films that have kind of been manipulated to shit. Of course, you get a few of them that pop up every once in a while. What was it that they just announced? Dune, I think, is premiering at Cannes or something.
Yeah, I think they just announced that for Cannes and Venice.
Yeah. So you have that stuff, but for this, some of the biggest ones were 12 Mighty Orphans, which is the football movie that just came out last week, which actually was surprisingly really good. And then False Positive, which hit Hulu today, also.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm actually going to watch that literally after we're done tonight.
Yeah, I really enjoyed False Positive.
Okay, I'm looking forward. That's my first A24 movie of the year, so I'm really looking forward to that one.
So there's a number of. I've watched a lot of documentaries. I've watched a lot of short films. I've watched a lot of features that have been hit or miss. There's a few that I really enjoyed. I've talked to a few filmmakers as well, which has been great. But there's a few that I really enjoyed. One was called The Novice. It got jury award or something at Tribeca. But it's this really intense film about a young woman at university who is joining the rowing team, and she's just absolutely obsessed with being the best. Absolutely obsessed. The most obsessive person of I have to beat you. And it's filmed really beautifully, and it's just you're like, holy shit, this is crazy. And it's so hard to explain because when I first heard of it, I was like, oh, that doesn't really sound up my alley. It wasn't one that I was that I put on my short list at first. But then I was talking to some friends that were like, you really need to see this. It's really good. Man, it blew me away. Such a good movie. So that's definitely, we'll be seeing that in theaters at some point.
Would you say it's kind of like Whiplash-esque as far as kind of the competitive edge and nature?
It is 1,000% Whiplash-ish. They compare it to Whiplash a lot.
Okay.
Actually,
I'm like, the way you put it out, I'm like, wow, it sounds like Whiplash but with rowing.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Any stars I would know in it or no? All relatively newcomers.
So the woman that played in The Orphan, she is the main star. Isabel Furman, I think is her name.
Okay.
And she's really good in this. So yeah, definitely check that out. That's a solid one.
The Novice. I'll write that down. What are some other ones that you really liked?
That I really liked? Okay, we'll go that direction.
Well, yeah, we're talking about that, right? Talking about movies that you really liked.
There are a few that I was like, oh fuck. There's another one called Not Going Quietly. It is about Adi Barkan. Adi Barkan is a 30-something-year-old man. I think he was 36 when he was diagnosed with ALS. Within 3 years, completely paralyzed in a chair, losing his ability to speak. But he's most known for in 2017, he was on a plane and confronted Senator Jeff Flake about the healthcare vote. Because I think it was the tax bill that was going through at that time. It would knock down, it would strip healthcare from a ton of people. And so it went viral. And basically he has a Be a Hero campaign. And I interviewed the filmmaker here, Nick Bruckman. He was awesome. And he said that he was brought on to film a welcome video or a launch video for the Be a Hero campaign. But then when he was talking to Addie and everything, he was like, I think there's more here. We need to do more about this. So Addie actually went across country to all of the vulnerable seats that were held by Republicans in the last election and was really it was kind of a race against time in a lot of ways because he was losing his ability to speak. He needed round the clock care. But oh my God, such a freaking inspiring individual. And I just love the documentary. It was so good, so well done. Kind of puts a human spin on a lot of the stuff that we see thrown around in the news and online and stuff. It really, really brought it home for me.
That's awesome. That actually kind of reminds me. There was a documentary I saw at this festival called Full Frame a couple of years ago that I don't remember the name. I can't remember the name of it to save my own life. But it's a similar thing. It was a guy who was diagnosed with ALS and was kind of like following him as his wife like following him and like learning to take care of him. But that's really interesting as far as that goes. That's awesome.
Puts it in perspective, like I'm always good for a tearjerker movie, but that was real, and it was cool. There's a short film called Time to Fly. It's a short animated film. I think it's like 8 minutes, 7 minutes. I was obsessed with this short. It's literally a baby owl that is like pushed out of the nest trying to fly, and as the owl is falling, she's running through a lot of stuff in her head, like what if I die? What if I don't become anything? What if I don't meet someone? What if I'm always alone? Thinking about all the fears that people go through, right? Like, what if this? What if that? And then kind of flips it on its head in the second part of it. And it's like, but what if I do find someone? What if I do like get married? What if I do have kids? What if I do like make, and it's just so good. The animation is so cool. It's so amazing to me when filmmakers can take such a strong message and a theme and deliver it that well within a 7-minute animated film. But it was adorable, and it was so fucking good. It was really
man.
Good.
See, you know what? This is what just makes me mad that like I kind of have to like kowtow to the blockbusters in order to like put out my reviews, because it makes me jealous, honestly, the amount of people who go to these festivals just nonstop and are just able to watch these movies there and don't have to watch like any other movies ever. Because like the whole thing about festival movies, right, is festival movies maybe one. How many are submitted a year, and how many will you even hear of? Forget that are submitted just to come out of the festival. Maybe one, if it's lucky, right? Coda, which is the Apple TV movie that's coming out later, that won, I think, Grand Jury Prize at Sundance. We're hearing a lot about that as far as that goes. And Sundance this year, and weirdly enough, like film festivals were actually, I think, helped a lot by the pandemic, because like they were able to like do a lot of stuff virtually, and so it allowed a lot of people to watch stuff that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. I actually was able to watch 2 Sundance movies virtually this year. Passing, which I really dug, and Crypto Zoo, which was this awesome animated movie. But you know what it is? It takes these movies that would be deemed like not worthy, let's say, by the powers that be in Hollywood, because it's not marketable enough, and because it's not flashy enough, and because it doesn't have explosion, but they just tell these intimate, basic stories. And like you said, they could just be about an owl, but like they're so intimate and they're so crushing. It's like, some of my favorite experiences where I'm like, yeah, even if the movie wasn't that good, just the experience of watching it at the festival, it's like, man, so it's nothing like it.
2 others I'll touch on real quick. The first one is I Carry You With Me. It just came out yesterday, released by Sony Picture Classics. No, today. Today's Friday. Came out today. It is a story of, it's a same-sex couple two same-sex individuals in Mexico. The one guy is very, out and more comfortable with who he is. The other guy has a kid from a straight relationship and is trying to keep like who he thinks he is a secret. And struggles with cultural impacts and stuff like that. He ends up moving to the U.S., starting a life to send money back for his kid. And it's just a really impactful story about culture. Like, I love that, like, seeing, and that's one of the good things about these. And the next one I'm going to talk about is an overseas film as well. But, like, talking about topics that we see time and time again, but from a different cultural standpoint and a different frame. Because we get so trapped in, like, the American way of seeing things and the American ideals and the American impact that it was such a beautiful movie, and it's one of my top of the year by far, as is the next one, which is called The Perfect David. This movie is not for everyone. I was blown away by it. It is so simple, but it's so good. And it's an Argentinian movie about a teenager. He's 17, and his mother is like obsessively controlling of him. as he works out and body builds and tries to sculpt like the perfect body and stuff. She wants to use him for her art. She's an artist, so she's like using like paper mache or plaster or whatever that is, and she's just on him about being perfect and having the perfect body. And like, if you go out with friends, you can't drink, you can't do anything, you know, whatever. But she's like, at one point, she reaches over and like wipes food off of his mouth, and he's 17 years old. He comes back drunk one night. She's bathing him. Like all these like really controlling things. So it's really intense, but it is a phenomenal movie because it starts talking. It shows him kind of like breaking down a little bit and always kind of like the novice in a way, but wanting to achieve the next level. So he, you know, starts taking steroids and he's already on some medication, and you see some rage, and there's questions about like his sexuality because he has trouble with a woman. And it's just altogether a really stunning movie to me.
Oh man. And this is a narrative or a documentary?
It's a narrative.
Narrative. What's it called?
It's a narrative. It's called The Perfect David.
Perfect David. That might sound like something I might want to seek out when it comes out of video. That sounds awesome.
I interviewed the director the other day, and just like hearing him talk about it, it was just such a good movie.
Man, what was his motivation behind like making the movies? I always love your director's motivation when it comes to like a story that effed up, you know?
Yeah, it was kind of just, you know, the pressures that young people have when they're growing up. And so, of course, like a lot of it is exacerbated through this story and the way that they chose to channel it through bodybuilding and all that. But that was the main focus of it. And he just was, I mean, he's a delightful person to speak to. And it's so easy for us to sit here all the time and shit on movies. But then, like, when you talk to the people that make them, you're like, oh, man, like, I totally see what you were going for there. Maybe it just wasn't for me.
Well, keeping in mind, too, that the majority of movies that we shit on are gigantically multi-million-dollar Hollywood blockbuster in which the director is little more than a hired hand. In this instance, it's like, actually, like, intimate stories in which the director actually gets to, you know, tell the story that it is that they want to tell as far as that goes. And the other thing, too, that I wanted to address as far as the whole foreign films, it's funny because I was listening to a podcast on this the other day. The thing that I feel like most people don't understand as far as when people talk about, they're like, oh, why is it that foreign films like are so different than American? It's not just that they're in a different language. It has to do with kind of the whole filmmaking process in and of itself. Because what people don't understand is that like the way in which movies are made in America is so polarly opposite to really the way that movies are made in pretty much every other aspect of the world. Because literally every other aspect of the world, it is like how you would expect a movie to be made. It is that it is the director's story, the director's vision, and everything that is there on set. Even the money people from the studio are there to service the director. It's not like it is here, where, unfortunately, and I hate to pull back the curtain on this, directors, specifically for a lot of the movies that people love, are nothing more than hired hands. And very rarely is it that their creative, quote-unquote, vision gets to shine through the vast amounts of CG spectacle and movie star action as far as that goes.
You know, the craziest part of The Perfect David to me was the acting, because obviously a lot of time is spent with the mother and the son, the main character. But, you know, the mother is a seasoned actress. Her name's Umbra Colombo. She's really, really good in this and really believable and authentic. And, like, you believe that this is actually a relationship that is stressful for both of them, but there's still so much love there. It's, you know, you're playing with that. The other guy, Mauricio Del Iorio, this is his first movie, and he was so good in it. And I don't know that he's like an actor. Like, I went on his Instagram and stuff to see what he was doing now. I don't know that he's going to be like in a lot of things coming up, if acting is really his future, or if it was kind of like he fit the role. But yeah, it's just so good. The acting was so good, and it really elevated it. It's one of those movies that I was like, I'm going to watch this because it sounds intriguing. Probably not going to like it, and I ended up being blown away by it. So that's always a fun thing. That's awesome. Two highlights of movies I did not care for, though.
Oh, yeah. You definitely give the shout out for movies that you don't care for, because I've had my fair share of those. It sucks. Both of my experiences with movies at Tribeca 2019 were not good. I watched Christoph Waltz's directorial debut, Georgetown, which sucked. And, like, really, really bad. I don't know what happened with that movie. That movie was, oh, man. And then I watched this other movie called, Good Posture. Good Posture, which was good, but it could have been a lot better. It was from the person who directed it was the creator of that show Doll and M on HBO, which kind of never went anywhere. But yeah, so what were your two movies?
So real quick to highlight the one other movie real quick. It's called All My Friends Hate Me. It's another movie that I really enjoyed. It's highly entertaining. It is really weird and really quirky, and kind of like a horror thriller in a way. But the main guy's so paranoid and like having some really weird social interactions with previous or old classmates.
Oh, it's one of those where you don't know if it's all in his head or actually a thing.
100%.
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
Everyone is having weird interactions coming out of this pandemic now, so it just hit really well. The first one that didn't really hit for me was No Man of God. So it is a movie starring Elijah Wood as one of the first, one of the first and one of the best psychologists that was kind of studying how serial killers were ticking. So like a profiler, I think. He's fine in it. I mean, he's actually pretty good. The guy that plays Ted Bundy in this is really good, but I feel like it was just same old with Ted Bundy. We've gotten so much on him in recent years. It didn't really do too much for me. I wasn't really thrilled about it, but it was fine. It was interesting enough. And I'm a sucker for serial killer and true crime stuff. Yeah. So I was all about that. So that was interesting. The next one though, which is a little bit more anticipated, it just came out today, is Werewolves Within.
I heard about that. Oh, the one with Sam Richardson. Yeah, I saw your post on this.
Let me start off with the fact that I love stupid movies. I love stupid movies. And campy movies. But they're not always successful. And this was not successful to me. The characters are all extremely eccentric and over the top, but not likable at all. The story is kind of generic in a lot of ways. And Sam Richardson is fine in it. He's really good, but he's playing his Veep character just toned down. And toning down that character doesn't really work for me. So I really wasn't into it. I was rather bored. But who was this Carlisle character?
Oh, so I'm actually glad that you brought. What was the name of the the Ted Bundy movie again? What was the name of that? God. No Man of God. So apparently, thank you, Dustin, also for pointing that out. Carlisle wrote the Bundy movie. So Dustin and I are fans of. Have Chris and I talked to you about Double Toasted and what they are?
No.
They're a YouTube review channel based out of Austin, Texas, comprised of these two movie commentators, Corey Coleman and Martin Thomas. And before they started up Double Toasted, their previous YouTube review service that they had was with a couple of other guys. It was animated. They would do animation over their podcast. It was called Spill.com. They did all sorts of animated reviews. You can go on YouTube. All their reviews are up. Early days of YouTube. I'm talking like 07 to 13. Some of the funniest reviews you'll ever see. One of their frequent collaborators who they had on the whole thing is that because of copywriting reasons, because of the company that they were working for that was licensing their website, they had to use, with the exception of Corey, they all had to use different names. So Martin's name on there was Leon. They had this other guy, Chris Cox, who used the name Cyrus. And one of the guys who they had on, who was a frequent member, was on almost every one of their shows before he left them, was C. Robert Cargill, who went by the name Carlisle, Christopher Robert Cargill. And if you recognize that name, it's because that's the guy who went on and wrote Sinister and Doctor Strange, and he wrote your Ted Bundy movie, The No Man of David. So that is the reference. Yeah, that is the reference that he brought up. It all comes full circle. So I was late to the Spill.com game, but Dustin's been a fan since day one. He was one of the OG Spill fans, and so it's kind of interesting kind of tracking Cargill's career since, because again, he went from, he's the first and only person I know of that went from YouTube movie critic to writer of Sinister and Doctor Strange. So
that's such an interesting journey, though, to go from.
Yeah, right.
Not only that, but then to go from Sinister to Doctor Strange.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing of how we got Sinister, Doctor Strange, was because he's friends, very good friends, with Scott Derrickson. They'd apparently known each other for years, like going back as far as that goes. So, and the whole thing is he was also getting into novels, but he'd been like an internet critic and been writing for years. You remember that website? One of the early movie review websites, ain'titcoolnews.com. Remember that website? Yeah, he was an early writer for that website. In fact, I think he wrote a review for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon that like got a whole bunch of attention as far as that goes. So for all of you YouTube fans out there, all of you YouTube commentators out there who think that one day you can go on to something bigger, just keep this in mind. One of the members of Spill.com, a YouTube review service, went on to write a Marvel movie. So just keep that in mind as far as that goes, as far as how high you can ascend, right? Talk about an inspirational journey right there.
That's crazy. And if you're hearing like loud noises behind me,
I was wondering.
I live near a minor league baseball stadium, and they're doing fireworks tonight.
Got it.
So my dog is also freaking out. It's pretty entertaining. The last movie, just to highlight, two more. One real quick is Italian Studies about a woman with amnesia kind of like roaming around New York City. Vanessa Kirby stars in it, and I love Vanessa Kirby.
Oh, she's awesome. She's awesome.
She's so fucking good. And she's really good in this. Movie didn't quite do it for me, but I really like her in it. And the last one that I was going to highlight that I didn't really care for, and I'm kind of pissed off about this, is The God Committee. So this has such an interesting premise to me because it's about the ethics committee or the committee at a hospital that decides who gets a donated organ.
I already like where this is going.
It's about the ethics of that committee. So the cast is really interesting. It's Kelsey Grammer, Julia Stiles, and Janine Garofalo.
Wow. When was the last time she was in something?
I don't know, but if you ask me who the best one out of those three in the movie was, it was Janine Garofalo.
Of course.
It just didn't. Oh God, it really didn't hit like what it could have. It never.
Yeah,
was
that's an awesome premise right there. That should be like really cool.
It was never very interesting. Unfortunately,
that's disappointing.
And also Kelsey Grammer. This is a slight spoiler, but Kelsey Grammer is sleeping with Julia Stiles in it, and I had a meltdown when that first happened. I was texting my podcast partner, and I was like, Julia Stiles and Kelsey Grammer are sleeping together. What the fuck? But yeah, again, you see some good movies at these things. You see some poor movies at these things. But it's always inspiring to see kind of what, filmmakers are doing out there. Talking with some of the stars, talking with some of the directors was just really inspiring and really cool to again, focus down on what they're actually intending with their films and kind of what their experience has been. So it's a great experience. I still have 2 more reviews coming out tomorrow, and then I am closing the book on Tribeca. But yeah, definitely recommend it. Definitely
the only big thing will be Dustin, I'm with you as far as that goes. What did happen to Julia Stiles? I have no. You know what I think happened was I think she did the 5th Jason Bourne movie, and when she died in that, it was like the symbolic death of her entire career as far as that goes.
I was trying to get an interview with her for this film,
dude.
And I wanted to interview her so bad because I had so many questions about Save the Last Dance.
Right.
But she's a solid actress, and she's
awesome. She's been good in everything she's been in.
Yeah, and she's not bad in this at all. It's just that, for me, the writing really let them all down.
Yeah.
Plus, the grammar was kind of a creep, but,
Well, just based on what you made it sound like his character's motivation were in the movie, it sounds like it. It kind of sounds like it.
It is something.
Yeah, man, this was awesome. Yeah, I love hearing about festival movies. So now my only question is, you gonna apply for you gonna apply for some of the other big ones? You think you're gonna try for New York or Venice or any one of those for press credentials?
Stay tuned.
Oh,
stay tuned.
That's all I gotta say, man. Here's the problem: is my first and only real experience with one of those big festivals came. I almost went to Toronto in 2019. And then I ended up backing out because of job requirement. Then I ended up leaving that job, and it's still my biggest regret because the amount of movies. The amount of movies that I missed from that film festival, both that came out in the fall and later on in 2020. Oh man, it is still going to be my biggest regret for a while. But Joe, man, it was awesome to have you on. Talk about talk about everything going on with Marvel, and to hear you talk about Tribeca, it just makes me jealous. That I'm like, man, I wish I still had all the money to spend. I could still go to these film festivals, but soon, hopefully, is all that I gotta say. And you guys can keep up with all of that and more by following Joe. Where can the good people find you?
Guide to Movies on Instagram, guidetomovies.com, and the Guide to Movies podcast with Joe and Sean every week.
What are you guys covering this week on the podcast?
So we actually we filmed. we recorded late this week, so we actually just released it today. We dived into Loki, and then we covered a lot of the latest news and stuff, especially the Spielberg and Netflix.
I saw that. That probably was a big nut to crack there.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But then some other casting that's happening with, of course, we're getting into Disney live action stuff again.
Oh, that must be fun.
Rachel Zegler from
for Snow White, right?
Yeah, for Snow White.
Oh, that's gonna be fun as far as that goes.
How are they gonna do the dwarfs?
I don't know. Look, they already kind of did it in the first Snow White live action movie that came out a couple years ago with Chris Hemsworth and Kristen Stewart. So
they weren't Disney though.
This is true. So we shall see.
Wasn't that who did that movie?
I think that was Warner Brothers, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was 20th Century Fox.
Was it Fox or Warner Brothers? It was Warner. No, it was Warner Brothers because it's the same company that did that Tarzan movie with Alexander Skarsgård that came out a couple years later. So it's Warner Brothers.
My father loves that movie.
I never watch it. I'm like, this does not look good. I have no desire to watch it. You know what the problem was? It came out a couple months after the Jon Favreau Jungle Book, and that CG was like the greatest CG I think I'd ever seen up to that point. So I was like, I don't want to see anything else with photorealistic animals. And that was so good. That's the only good Disney live action remake that they've done. So like none of the other ones have been good. Like not even remotely good. Like we talked about like how the Marvel movies have this continuing bar. And I'm like, yeah, all the Disney live action movies, with the exception of Jungle Book, have this like kind of bar of shittiness, and none of them have overcome it. So
I think Beauty and the Beast did really well.
I did not like that one.
I really enjoyed that. And
I did not like that one.
Like Aladdin too.
It's funny because I have boycotted every single movie that has come out since Beauty and the Beast. I've not watched a single one. I went out of my way. I'm like, I didn't watch Dumbo, I didn't watch Aladdin, and I didn't watch Lion King when they came out in 2019, and I haven't watched one since. I know everyone's been saying good things about Cruella. I have no desire to watch it. I will not watch it.
Good. It's not great, but it's better than you would expect.
Well, because it's Craig Gillespie directing, and that guy is like probably the most underrated director. Like, dude, if you get a chance, I don't know if you watch much Apple TV. Watch Physical on Apple TV Plus with Rose Byrne. He directs the pilot of it, and it's fantastic. And he's also directing the up and coming the Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee biopic series starring Sebastian Stan. Yeah, he's directing that. Lily Collins. No, Lily. The other one, the one who was in the Beatles movie. Why am I? Lily James. That's it.
James, that's right.
Yeah,
who was also in Cinderella, which was just referenced.
Yep. So wow, talking about 6 Degrees. It all comes back. 6 Degrees of Disney. As far as that goes.
Richard Madden's in Cinderella. Richard Madden, one of the most underrated actors in my opinion.
There you go. Gonna be in Eternals. And again, him and his co-star. What's it called? Ken Harrington. The Stark brothers reuniting. As far as that goes, it's just we're just gonna.
He's rumored as one of the potential Bonds.
Ken Harrington or Richard Madden?
Richard Madden.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we'll see that as far as that goes. But yeah. So you guys can keep up with all of that and more by following Joe on Guy at the Movies and following us, myself and Chris here on the Talkin TV podcast at Talkin TV on Facebook and Instagram. Be sure to also click the subscribe button, click the like button, click the bell next to it. That way you guys get notified every time we put up new content. You guys know the deal. You know it. You've heard me say it a million times before. Joe, you wanna do my famous trademark slogan for me?
Oh my god, I forget it.
I don't. Come on. No, you
watch
don't.
Some fucking movies. Is that what it is?
I'm like, don't even try it. I'm like, I know you know. You've heard me say it so many goddamn times. 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.